The island of Iwo Jima was of vital importance to end World War II. This became alarmingly clear with the first Guam-based B-29 attacks on the mainland of Japan. Japanese fighters taking off from the airfields on Iwo Jima could easily intercept the B-29s on their flight path to the Japanese cities, exacting their daily toll. It stood out in the Pacific Ocean, a tall, conical slab of volcanic rock 660 miles from Tokyo, the gateway to Japan. It was a big nut to crack, and the American High Command knew it. This was the Japanese homeland. This was the first time the Allies would be invading what was originally Japanese soil. The battle for Iwo Jima changed the course of history, for it was here that the word honor became truly defined. It was here that 27 Medals of Honor were given out, more than any other action in any war. From the moment Lieutenant Harold Schreier raised the first flag on Mount Suribachi, the Marine Corps and what it stood for changed forever. James Forrestal, the Secretary of the Navy, stated, its appearance over Suribachi would ensure the Marine Corps would last 500 years. On Iwo Jima, more Marines were put into battle than any other. On Iwo Jima, more Marines died than in any other. In return for all these sacrifices, America gained 2 airfields within easy striking distance of Japan. The Japanese mainland was no longer at arm's length, and neither was the end of the war. Mount Suribachi still rises out of the Pacific today, much as it did 50 years ago. It may be hard to picture the violence of the conflict that occurred there, but for those that fought and watched their friends fall, nothing is left to the imagination. More than that, the bravery shown by those men who stood in that hell is perhaps unsurpassed by any other. Uncommon valor was a common virtue. No better tribute was ever given, nor was it ever more deserved. This is a program about the 50th anniversary reunion trip of those involved in the defeat of the Japanese on Iwo Jima in World War II. For most of the veterans, the tour came to a close with a cruise of Pearl Harbor in Honolulu, where it all began 50 years ago. If the Japanese had not attacked Pearl, there would have been no Iwo Jima. These men would never have enlisted. Thousands of lives would not have been lost.
All of our comrades, Frank, that we lost in the Pacific.
God bless them.
And thousands more would have gone a different direction in their life. But it was not to be. Iwo Jima did happen. February 19, 1945, they scrambled onto a beach in a little 6-square-mile island, most knowing that they could easily end their young life there. But they prevailed. What was gained from Iwo Jima? Thousands of Air Force servicemen were saved. The war ended sooner, but perhaps there is one more positive thing that still endures as a result of Iwo Jima. Our country gained a group of gallant servicemen who are living testaments to the best of American principles: service to country, loyalty to fellow men, courage under fire, valor, and honor. Honor is defined as a code of integrity, dignity, and pride. Inspiring words in a dictionary. If you could take a picture of those words, it might look something like this. One's honor used to be sacred, but today, in these days of flexible ethics, honor is not a common commodity. Personal honor may be the backbone America is lacking. And so these men are very valuable to our country. They are living testimony to a time when honor came first. They are the best of what America represents. They embody what America needs so desperately. And so we dedicate this program to them, to those who answered their country's call, those who died so young, and those who lived on and kept the flame of honor alive in our country. May the grief they feel for those dear friends they lost ease, and may those who gave their lives rest in peace. This is their reunion of honor. They gathered in San Francisco and Los Angeles for the first leg of the trip. At the reunion dinner in Los Angeles, the faces were warm and friendly, and as each table gathered for dinner together, 50 years melted away as if they had never happened. Older now, many veterans couldn't fit in their uniforms of 1945, but the faces glowed with the same optimism of an 18-year-old, ready to serve his country. General Snowden welcomed the troops back.
This is just a time to get together, to find out, renew your acquaintances with your shipmates and your buddies on Iwo Jima, and to bond together as we undertake a very sentimental journey to Iwo Jima.
The next morning they'd ship out, but this time on Continental jumbo jets, and they'd stage at luxury hotels in Saipan and Guam before their flight to Iwo Jima. The respect and admiration of the active Marines for the veterans who distinguished the Corps on Iwo Jima was evident from the beginning. An honor guard at the Honolulu airport waited to pay their respects as the Iwo veterans stopped on their way to Saipan and Guam. And later at the reception on Saipan, the Marines of 50 years ago were welcomed back.
We will not forget the United States Marines, and we will do everything we can to ensure that this shared experience is preserved forever. I am honored to be with you this evening and deeply appreciative of your presence on our once again peaceful shores. Thank you, Jesus Mercy, God bless you, and most of all, Semper Fi.
As I said at the beginning, you are true American heroes. You need to understand that. You need to know that we of the present generation look at you with eyes of great admiration, great awe in what you accomplished, and tremendous appreciation in what you are, what you were, and what you did for this nation of ours. So we're proud of you, proud to be here with you, and have a great time. This is not a time for memorializing. You're supposed to get drunk and have a good time here tonight, and I'm sure you'll do that.
The first day on Guam gave the veterans of the 3rd Marine Division the opportunity to commemorate those who died on Guam.
Dear Lord, we thank you for seeing us here safely on our journey to Iwo Jima, and for allowing us to pause here to remember our comrade liberators who never left in body but remain in spirit. We ask thy blessing on us as we continue our pilgrimage to Iwo Jima and our safe return to our families. We ask all this in his name. Amen. Amen.
The people of Guam are our true friends, and they are wonderful patriots. 50 years ago, this island was our home. Here we boarded ships to invade Iwo Jima. Half a century later, here we are home again. People of Guam never forgot us, and we will never forget them. Have a day.
As the veterans prepared for the next day's trip to Iwo, they spoke about why they were going back.
I felt that I wanted to retrace some of the steps of my life, and this was a very important, if not the most important event in my life. And I wanted to go back to the island one last time to see it and bring back some memories that I've harbored over the years.
The true heroes in any battle are the guys that are left behind, and any Marine, I think, will tell you that. The true heroes are those that didn't make it back, not those that get the medal and get all the glory in the press and what have you. The heroes are the ones that don't get back. All the memorial services and the reunions, the highlight of it is the memorial service to remember those guys. That's what it's about.
And finally, it was D-Day, 1995. Rising at 5 in the morning, the veterans, their families, and friends circled the lobby, eager for their transports to take them to their rendezvous with memories, happy and painful.
This is the
big day. We've been waiting 6 months for this. I can't wait. It's going to be a day of cheers and laughter. Mostly tears.
We just can't wait. Most of us were on LST 477 hit by a kamikaze plane. We didn't think we'd make it. Now we're going back, so we're kind of anxious to get there. We waited a long time.
It's going into the unexpected. You don't know the effect it's going to have on you. You don't know the feeling. What you may get the emotion of geography alone. You don't know. It's a mystery. We're looking forward to it, but in a way you have some concern.
The 727s were a big change from the LSTs that originally brought them to Iwo Jima. The only pleasant memory on that first trip was steak and eggs before combat.
I was on an LST, which is a landing ship tank. The other name that was given to its large slow target, number 399, and basically we were the carriers of the assault troops in the campaigns in the Pacific. And one of the things I always did was save for the final day, that morning, was steak and eggs for the troops that were going to hit the beaches.
The island came into view. Pulses quickened as they braced for emotions they hadn't felt in years. The emotional tension may have been as high as 50 years ago, but today it wasn't for fear of loss of life, but for fear of shadowy emotions, hidden, and then emerging suddenly, like the enemy did 50 years ago. It was 8:58 a.m. in 1945 when they landed the first time on Iwo Jima. In the LSTs, many wondered if this would be their last ride.
You get to know the Marines and you know what their job is, and you look in their faces and you know that that evening some would not be with us. It's really difficult to explain when you're very, very young and you're doing something which you believed in.
I think I knew from boot camp that I was going to go into combat. I mean, I had hoped so. I mean, I was afraid the war was going to end before we got there. But, I don't know, it was adventure, excitement. I had led an exciting life, but not nearly as exciting as going to war. And I think there was an element of fear, apprehension, you know, what's going to happen to me. Captain helped us by saying, I want you to look on your left and look on your right, you know. One of the three of you won't be back, you know, kind of stuff.
The Japanese General Kuribayashi was given orders from Japan to make the Iwo Jima battle so expensive to the Americans that they would never consider landing on the mainland. We who were in the infantry units and most of our leaders didn't realize that the Japanese commander had that mission. He had told his soldiers to take 7 American Marines with you before you give your life for the Emperor. That's the reason Iwo Jima was so tough.
The tremendous number of casualties was just extraordinary, and it's only by the great performance of those young Marines with just sheer guts, determination, and drive, knowing what they had to do and willing to do it, is the only way we won on Iwo Jima.
And then a quieter, softer voice brought them back from their memories.
Welcome to Iwo Jima, Japan, ladies and gentlemen. Is approximately 8:15 in the morning. 50 years ago, you ventured across the Pacific. The battle was fierce, but your determination, bravery, and courage brought victory. By the end of the war, Iwo Jima's airfield accommodated 2,251 emergency B-29 landings, saving the lives of as many as 25,000 aircrew. In a ringing tribute to your sacrifices and courage, Admiral Nimitz, who proclaimed among the Americans who served on Iwo Island, uncommon valor was a common virtue. It is truly a back to Iwo Jima today, March 14, 1995, exactly 50 years after the formal flag-raising ceremony and 2 days before the island was officially declared secure.
The reception had been brutal 50 years ago. The Japanese fire was heavy. The American return fire was deafening. But today, the planes would touch down on a serene island whose grizzled landscape had been softened by nature's eternal cycle of renewal. Today would be different. Today, the victors were returning. Weeks before D-Day 1995, 600 active-duty Marines with Navy, Army, Coast Guard, and Air Force support had worked tirelessly to prepare the island for the triumphant return of their brothers in arms. After heartfelt greetings, the vets were ready to go, and the 5-ton trucks took them on their way. First stop, the infamous black sands of Iwo Jima's landing beaches. Whether they landed on red, yellow, blue, or green beach, the black sand was the first thing most Marines contacted on Iwo Jima, usually from an inch away, trying to burrow into the soft sand as Japanese firepower raked over their heads. But on this day, that black, unforgiving sand was stoically silent, the site of more than one private moment.
My name is Marion Yandell. I was a PFC machine gunner in F Company, 2nd Battalion, 27th Marines, 5th Division. I landed on Iwo on the first wave. I came ashore right here. It was Red Beach 2, and Red Beach 1, and at that time the edge of the island here was the same steepness that this is. We had to go across up over the hill and down the other side.
How did you think today would be?
Today?
Yeah.
Today is very, very emotional. And I try not to think of it all the time because as soon as I do, I just get overwhelmed. It's all of the buddies that I had that can't make it over here that would love to be here, and all of the fellas that were with me at the time, some of them dead, most of them are dead, and those that are alive, they belong here with me, and I'm sorry. I have 140 fellas that are in a newsletter type thing by Peter Rondero up in Fresno, California. And I'm gonna put this in some little plastic bottles and then send it to everybody in our outfit who wants it.
How much do you think that weighs?
about as much as I do. It weighs about, it's got to be weighing 100 and some 50 pounds, you think?
And then it was time for the formal ceremony, with a series of Japanese and American officials speaking.
Those of us who were present on this island 50 years ago are extremely fortunate to be here today, and we recognize how fortunate we are indeed.
Ambassador Mondale, Honorable John Dalton, Secretary of the Navy. But few could forget the quivering voice of the widow of the commander who fought them to the death. Ironic that one of the most impressive speakers was the one whose words most veterans couldn't understand. But in the tone of her voice, you could hear the horror of war and 50 years of sorrow and the incredible sense of loss of loved ones who cannot be replaced. It was the loss of the people who died on Iwo Jima that occupied many people's thoughts as the ceremony continued. Many had died on the first day of the invasion. Many would die from the bloody campaigns of Hill 362, the Meat Grinder, Turkey Knob, the Amphitheater. There were many individual acts of heroism just to survive each day. Kenneth Moles brought his son to the reunion, and Peter relayed the battle experiences of his father, who has difficulty speaking.
He got on the beaches the first day and stayed pretty much the whole time. He was, his biggest thing for him was that he did not get shot. He doesn't know why. He just kept trying to go forward. All his top men were gone, were dead. So he kept everybody together and kept them down and kept going forward.
They had really no training in combat. So I told this new replacement who was with me in the hole, I said, now, whatever you do, don't get out of the hole. I says, if a grenade comes in the hole and it's in your side, I says, you jump over to my side and I'll dive at the grenade. So, sure enough, the grenade come in the hole. And I dove at the grenade and I laid there, and finally it went off. When it went off, I laid on my back there, but I still had my rifle. And as I laid down there, I looked up and I see him getting out of the hole. And this Jap coming at him with a bayonet, you know, with his rifle and a bayonet. And he had pierced his jacket already, unbeknown to me. But when I seen him come with that bayonet, I shot him and shot him twice. And this saved that kid's life. So the kid now lives in Texas and he's okay. There's nothing wrong with him. But I wound up getting a Purple Heart for it.
Tensions were unbearable and danger so ever-present that even the night offered no relief. Troops found they could relax if one of the war dogs were assigned to them to alert them of any Japanese approach.
The dogs at Iwo, I think perhaps the greatest service they performed was at night on outpost and as for security. And troops have a tendency, I mean, they have a more comfortable feeling if they know that there's a dog out there to detect some enemy trying to infiltrate. And they would get more rest that way. I know the one instance, a fellow named Walter Josephack, who was killed at Iwo, but he was wounded, and his dog crawled up beside him and took the full impact of a grenade.
To some, the ceremony lasted too long, only because the speeches wandered far from honoring those who died there. But a few addressed the purpose of the hour and the purpose of the trip.
In the 36 days that followed, spirit, fortitude, and bravery abounded on both sides. Many thousands of lives were lost on both sides. While we can measure the losses, only those who survived know the true toll. Those who fought here have given us a special meaning for the word courage, embodied in the deeds of men fighting for a cause which required their utmost loyalty and selfless dedication, and many gave their utmost here. This is a day for the veterans of Iwo Jima. You have paid for it with blood and sweat and tears and the long absence of friends. Many fallen comrades are not with us here today in the flesh, but they will be with us forever in spirit. Their memory is the final and the enduring legacy of Iwo Jima, of what happened here 50 years ago, so far from the green hills, the rolling rivers of America, and so far from the calm, snow-covered Fuji and the terraced farmlands of Japan, and lastly, so far from the families of both and from home.
Each in his own way commemorated the fallen, the Japanese and the Americans. "50 years ago, the crowning moment was the conquest of Mount Suribachi, and that is where most of the veterans headed after the ceremony ended. The flag went up not once, but twice. One revived the spirits of the struggling Marines on the island. The second carried an image of heroism around the world.
The raising of the flag to me was something very different. We were down on the low ground, the 4th Marine Division, and I don't know at what stage it was, but someone spotted the flag up on the mountain, and Marines were in and out of foxholes and moving, and someone yelled, "Hey, look at the mountain, the flag's up." And it was like a high school football game with all the young men there, waving helmets, waving rifles, and everybody shouting, "Hey, look at the flag," you know? And it was a very inspiring and a very big part of our confidence and feeling that we're doing a good job for the country, and the flag is up already.
At 2:30 in the afternoon, the flag went up in Suribachi, which is that famous picture, and the whole fleet could see it. And being on the beach, it just brought a lump in my throat because of the background of the dive bombers coming across it and strafing and dropping their bombs, and then major capital ships firing with that perfectly blue sky with some clouds. It was a sight that brought a lump to my throat and tears to my eyes, and I'll never forget that until the day I die.
The Marines were given a lift of spirit, but it would take hourly acts of heroism to win the battle.
Sergeant Boots Thomas was 20 years old. When his platoon leader was killed, he took over the platoon without hesitation. In the fighting around the base of Suribachi, he earned the Navy Cross for exposing himself for a long period of time under direct fire from the enemy as he tried to maneuver tanks in position to help break up some of those strongly defended positions. For that, he received the Navy Cross and deserved it. He was the fellow who took the 40-man patrol up the hill to the top. He's the young Marine who found the piece of pipe to which the first small flag was attached. He was later taken out to the command ship at General Smith's direction so he could do a radio interview that would be rebroadcast to the States. And as he left the ship, Boots said, "You people need to understand that it's hell in there. My first birthday is coming up, and I don't expect to make it." And he didn't. 1 week before his 21st birthday, on the 10th of March, he was down by a sniper. The sniper first shot the rifle out of his hand, and then is there on one knee with his radio in his hand talking to his company command post. A second sniper bullet took him out. Well, Boots' attitude of not making it to his birthday
was a pretty common attitude amongst many troops on the ground. We just didn't know how long we could make it.
Of course, those medical corpsmen were just, they were just the bravest class of people. I mean, they would, if a man were wounded, they would just go to him. I mean, and sometimes they wouldn't wait for you to move into position to give them any cover. They'd just go right on to that wounded man.
Each veteran searched the island for a spot where a memory occurred. Some read letters they wrote on the island. Most went to Mount Suribachi. Those whose loved ones perished at sea attended a naval ceremony. Patricia Armstrong's father, Austin Behan, commander of the Pensacola, died instantly on D-2. She was 6 years old.
My journey coming back was to find out a little bit about it and to bring to closure, because, you know, for a child, you don't, in those days, they tried to keep things from you. They didn't have bereavement outreach or any kind of a ceremony of death or life, so I came back to kind of fulfill that for myself. So they did a service, it was very nice, and they had did the taps and threw the wreath over the water, and for me, I'm so glad I came.
Many took the opportunity to tour the caves and look for once familiar sights. Getting from site to site was in traditional Marine Corps fashion, 5-ton trucks. A chance to feel like a Marine again, and for the old and new Marines to meet. The active duty Marines were great moral support when things got rough.
I look for the cemeteries. I didn't really know that the cemeteries were gone. And it's kind of, you know, I wanted to see a couple buddies there, but they weren't there. And see. And like I say, I had to see them graves, but I didn't.
The graves were moved before the island was returned to the Japanese, many to Punch Bowl in Honolulu, where the tour would go tomorrow. For now, it was time to leave. After traveling so far, it was difficult to leave the island. Many were aware it was probably their last visit.
Well, I had to come back. I dreamed of this place so much, you know. 365 days a year for 50 years. And I just had to come back one more time. Lost a lot of friends. A lot of my buddies, they're still buried here. You know, most of them got to their hometowns or something. But some were unknown, and that means that at least I said goodbye to them for the last time. Next time I see them will be upstairs, I guess.
Many veterans were disappointed they didn't get to see all the places they wanted to. So Continental Micronesia agreed with military historical tours to accommodate the veterans' wishes. The 727s would stay until the veterans were ready to go. Many took the second chance to get up to Mount Suribachi, the goal of their trip. The 727s waited for the last veterans and then took them away from a place that had had such an impact on their lives. The return to Iwo Jima was over. The next morning, the military historical tours personnel were up bright and early to make sure the passport snafus were sorted out and the tour was running smoothly again.
These personal calls have got to stop.
How to make all these arrangements to get you guys all over.
We asked how the experience of Iwo Jima went.
My foxhole buddy told me that when I got over there to find our foxhole, and I said, "How am I going to know it, Sam?" And he's bigger than I am. He said, "Well, it's going to be the widest and the deepest one there, so it still should be there." But of course, I didn't find it, but those sort of things.
Yeah, of course, that was something that I was through, and no one's ever going to take that back from me. But as it turns out, of course, that I was a part of it, and this is hallowed ground for Marines. It always will be. And for that part of it, I feel honored, really, if you want to say it that way. But of course, someone else would say I wouldn't go through it for anything. Well, I wouldn't either, again, that's for sure. It was quite an experience coming back here.
It gives some finality. You know, most people get to bury their parents. She never did, so I like that. It's good for her.
Oh, I used to know these guys.
He had a stroke in 12 years ago or so, but he feels to this day, of course I just knew this, he doesn't say a lot, that he can't talk because he killed so many Japanese.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what he feels. I think he's been going to church a lot more, of course, when he gets older, and I think that's what he's thinking, which is not true, of course. Everybody was doing what they had to do. When he left Iwo Jima, or when he left the war, he completely blocked it out. He didn't think about it at all. I only knew parts and pieces of it, and I think he needed to get that respect that should be dedicated to these men and to the Marines, and to bury a few things. I know I feel a lot more at ease, and I know he does for that.
The 4th Division Marines were commemorated by Admiral Richard Mackey. At the final dinner on Saipan, Colonel Warren Weedhahn summed up the trip. Then it was time to bid farewell to Saipan, to acknowledge the corpsmen for their courage in battle, and sing the Marine Corps hymn.
How does it go in English? From the halls of mighty Zuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battle on the land and on the sea. First they fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honors clean. We are proud to serve the title of United States Marine. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Meanwhile, at the farewell dinner on Guam, there was a definite feeling of relaxation. John Broen urged the veterans and their families to unwind, and they took him seriously.
The applause for our lovely volunteers, ladies and gentlemen, are Mr. Tamale.
The next day it was back to Honolulu for a day of relaxation. The next morning they would honor their comrades again at Punch Bowl Cemetery and reflect on the trip.
I've been very happy to say that during this trip, several Marines have come to me and said, General, we just couldn't have done this before now. I think there comes a point in the life of every man that there's some experience in his past that he just wants to get over. Psychologically, I think every Marine who stood on Iwo Jima during this return was able to reach accommodation with the fact that it's time to put all this behind us.
I said in my remarks up there that there comes a point when you have to realize that those of us who were there didn't have anything to do with starting that war. We didn't choose to be there. We were there because we were ordered to be there. The defenders were there because they were ordered to be there. And we both did what we had to do. And that's all Marines were accustomed to doing, is do what you got to do and get it finished. So I think this time as Marines stood there, many who have had strong emotions about it, had strong emotions this time. And there were lots of teary-eyed Marines up there, and nobody ought to be ashamed of that. That shows that you're really thinking about it. And you could stand on that ground and remember, and if you closed your eyes and thought about it, you could kind of hear some of the sounds. You could think about your friends that you lost, and certainly all of us lost very dear friends with whom we'd been in the Corps for a couple of years, some of us. And those things kind of came back. But I think as they came back, there came the recognition that now we're here to just pay homage to those guys and tell them how much we miss them, how much sorrow we have for them, and ask their families to recognize that it's all behind us now. And we just hope that the heart is healed, but the mind remembers all the good things that they want to remember.
And there was no place more beautiful to put the past behind than the elegant lawn of the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. Lays of flower and shell, a refreshing drink, warm friendship, and a magnificent sunset. And then dinner was served. Charles Lindbergh, the last surviving member of the team that took the flag up to Suribachi, stepped to the microphone and proved to be not only a man of courage, but a gentleman with a big heart.
Regards to the flag raising, my own personal feelings, there should have been no names mentioned at any time, because I feel that every person on that island raised that flag. I thank you.
Entertainment filled the evening with hits of the 40s and the warmth of the Hawaiian Islands.
Before I say goodnight, I share with you one of the most important songs that came out of your time. American, God shed His grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea
50 years ago, Iwo Jima was the fiercest battlefield of the Pacific. Today, a quiet, scrubby little island with black sand beaches. Hard to imagine such a place could have been the setting for such a tremendous sacrifice of life. In many ways, the reunion trip was to soothe the pain of the living, those who had had to live out their lives missing those that were left behind on Iwo Jima. They were ready to face death for their country, but they were never ready to watch their buddy's life stop in an instant. There is no way to bring them back, but at least this trip offered a chance to say goodbye once again, to lay those memories to rest, and let the sadness of Iwo Jima they've been carrying all these years sink away into the silent black sand. The story of Iwo Jima is also the story of the survivors and what they did with their borrowed time. That is the legacy for generations to follow.
I think only that he knew what freedom was and hard work was, and he put his head down and accomplished things that I think he wouldn't have normally, knowing that he had 50 years of borrowed time. And I think I saw that, I felt that, and I think I'm a definitely better person for it. I think that from day one, of course, being brought up by him, the valor has been stuck in me, is to be strong and to keep going in life, and not a lot can stand in your way.
The experience of Iwo Jima continues to have a great impact on the young Marines of today.
First, the inspiration that America has people like those Marines, the enlisted men and the officers, their attitudes, their physical condition, their dedication. Gee, I wish every American could see that. Inspiring and wonderful.
Well, I didn't think it'd be this great. I thought maybe just walk around. They've just treated us super, and if it wasn't been for this, we'd have never got none of this done. No way. There's no way we could have walked around this island, or now maybe I could have walked up there where we landed, right down along here somewhere, right there in Green Beach 1. But I couldn't have. There's no way that I could have walked back up there to the airfield. No, not half of us. Even if I was in good shape and it was a walker.
I love them. I thought they were like you. I mean, when you were, you must have been 17 or 18 when you were here. They all were like you. I mean, they were wonderful. I was impressed with their beautiful youth, their gracious courtesies, and their awe of all of you. They were really in awe. They knew it. They knew what they were here for, and they were so excited, and they realized how lucky they were to be here.
The tradition, the courage, the honor of those who served on Iwo Jima will not fade into history. It is alive and well in the United States Marine Corps and in generations to follow.